Welcome to the T2 Hubcast. Join T2 and guests as they discuss all things personal and professional development. The T2 Hubcast, brought to you by the People Performance People.
Welcome to the T2 Hubcast with me, Spencer Locker.
Me, Dave Pendleton.
Morning, Dave.
Hey up.
How are you doing? All right?
I'm all right, mate. Yeah, good.
Excellent.
All good. Busy,
Good
busy.
stuff.
All good.
Excellent. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's wrap up this occasional series we've got. 5 Dysfunctions Dissected. So we've got these two remaining dysfunctions. Accountability and results. So what are your thoughts? Straight off the bat, what are your thoughts there?
Well, we're heading to the top of the pyramid, Spence. And yes, we're probably not going to talk about results an awful lot. And the reasons why will become apparent once we've talked about the last of the behaviours, accountability, and then linked right back through the series all the way back to trust. All right, so accountability. So we mentioned it in the previous hubcast around commitment. If I simply asked a room full of people, a team of people, said, do you hold yourself accountable for the results on a daily basis? Of course. Everybody's going to put their hand up and say, yes, of course I do. Sure, it's part of being a responsible adult and somebody getting paid a salary for an organisation, right? But that's not what it means in the Lencioni model.
No.
Think about the previous behaviours before accountability, which was commitment, conflict and trust. Accountability basically means that we as committed team members, committed to the cause rather than just the role, we're committed to the larger cause. When people start to demonstrate behaviours that go against our expectations for things like collaboration and teamwork and positivity and all those types of things, then we must call that out. We must raise it. We must ask questions. And the reason we must do that is because it basically means that people are not pulling in the same direction. And if we're going to try and achieve what the organisation wants us to achieve, we've all got to pull in the same direction. And that doesn't matter what your role is, what the expectations on you are as a human, what it is you're trying to achieve. We all need to pull in the same direction by that higher level of understanding and appreciation. Right.
So from my sort of understanding of what you've just said, and to be frank, it wasn't that complicated, pretty straightforward. So we generally, and when I say generally, I mean sort of everybody, I'd like to think, make themselves accountable, don't they?
Yeah.
They make themselves accountable because it's sort of within your realm of control.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm accountable for what I do. And I think that when you ask the question in the room, that's what everybody's doing.
Sure.
I'm making myself accountable. But I think one of the things that the difference between that and the Lencioni model is that the Lencioni model alludes to making each other accountable.
100%.
Yeah.
And making sure that your co-workers and team members are indeed demonstrating the right behaviours. So you are making sure that they're being accountable. Absolutely. And when that's not the case, asking them why not.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I know we've worked with organisations who have had within the hierarchy of within the sort of senior management team, we've had some people who have not necessarily made themselves accountable because they're in quite a unique position in the sense that they are a bit of a subject matter expert. So when somebody's turned around and said, have you actually achieved those outcomes? Have you achieved those aims? And people have felt uncomfortable because people have turned around and said, well, you can't challenge me. You don't know what I do. You don't know what that's all about. And when we've talked to groups, they've sort of said, yeah, sometimes we struggle with actually making each other accountable because, you know what, it's the threat and the conflict.
Sure is.
Because, you know, if I turn around to you, Dave, and said, I know what your outcomes are or what outcomes you're supposed to achieve, I might not necessarily know how you're supposed to achieve them, but I know what the outcomes are. So I shouldn't really concern myself with how you do it. It's whether you do it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not necessarily about the specific outcomes. It's about how the outcomes I suppose, attach themselves to everybody else's outcomes to create success across the board.
Yes.
Rather than just isolated success.
Certainly.
A prime example, and this is a really recent example, Spencer, I'm doing some work, strangely, within customer service. Now, I sort of make the point in customer service that for me, there are only two major roles within an organization. And really, it doesn't matter what organization you work in. There is sales. And listen, don't forget, is regardless of what type of organization you work in, if you are a profit-making organization, you have to sell stuff, whatever that stuff is.
Right.
Whether it's computers, desks, oil, you have to sell stuff. An old mentor once said to me, Spence, this one-liner, which really has always resonated with me: production minus sales equals scrap. So you can make as much stuff as you want. You can be world-class at making stuff, but if you don't sell it, everyone's going home.
Yeah.
All right. And even, I suppose, in non-profit organizations like charities, you've still got to sell stuff in some way or another. And then the second role is, in its broadest sense, customer service. So once stuff has been sold, there's other people have to look after the customers that bought the stuff in some way or another. So if you think about accountancy and finance, processing accounts, getting money into the organization is a level of service in some form or another. So, and it might be just the way that my black and white brain works, Spence, because it does. If you're not involved in sales, which everybody probably should be at some point, if you're all pulling in the same direction and you're a profit-making business, everybody should be involved in sales in some way or another, directly or indirectly. And then once that's done, everybody should be involved in customer service in some way or another, either directly or indirectly. So if you think about the accountability piece, which you're talking about in the Lencioni model, Spence, if you and I work together and you was dealing with a customer in a way that I thought wasn't very positive, maybe you've dealt with a customer that's relatively hard to deal with, you come off the phone or you close the email or something and start moaning and groaning about the customer to me. That says to me that actually there's a slight misalignment to the cause, because customers have got every right to be frustrated and annoyed. And to be fair, we probably put them there because we ain't done the right job.
Yeah.
And this piece of work that I was doing recently, there is a very big disconnect between sales and customer service. Customer service blame the salespeople for selling stuff inappropriately, and then they have to sweep up the mess.
Right. Yeah.
Which is not the first time I've heard that, by the way.
No.
There's always generally a big disconnect between sales and marketing, which again, it doesn't make any sense to me. These guys should be collaborating. They should be connected and stitched together more tightly than anyone, because we're all trying to achieve the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's to sell stuff and make sure customers are happy with the stuff that we sold. So guess what? They come back and buy some more stuff.
Hey, yeah, definitely.
So the point, I don't know if I've probably gone via China to try and explain the situation, Spence. Which,
hey, we enjoyed the trip, Dave.
It's not usually my way. It is basically, when we observe people displaying, using language, whatever it might be, in a way that we think is inappropriate to the cause and to the outcomes, then we've got to be able to raise that to the person, people, or teams concerned. And it might well be that there's just been a momentary lapse in concentration. It might be that somebody's just having a bad day, which we all have. And of course, in those examples and many more other examples we could give, it's perfectly acceptable, because having that word might just help them just realign and say, oh, you're right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Apologies. Just give me 10 minutes and I'll be back on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or if there's some sort of refusal, like, are you telling me how to do my job? What gives you the right to tell me my job?
Yeah.
It's not about me telling you your job. It's not that at all.
No.
It's just me saying to you, there seems to be a misalignment in our thought process. No more, no less.
And that's incredibly powerful, because, again, it's linked to all the other stuff that we've talked about. Why would you not want that feedback? If you've done something wrong, I mean, don't get me wrong. If you've been truly honest with yourself, you probably know that you've messed up, or you've been inappropriate, or you've not
You're
been
not bought into the cause.
you're not bought into the cause. But being honest with yourself, you know what? Sometimes if somebody turns around and makes that observation, you know what? You're right there. I'm really sorry about that. Have you got any tips? Whatever you want to talk about, however you want to pitch it. But yeah, if you feel that you feel the need to defend yourself because you're feeling threatened, you might be feeling, what's the V word that we talk about with trust? Vulnerable.
Vulnerable. Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
You're feeling vulnerable. Why are you feeling vulnerable? Because you trust the people you're with, or do you trust the people you're with? Yeah. Are you sure that they've got the best intentions for you, for the organisation, for the team? If that's the case, then why are you feeling vulnerable? Yeah, it knits all the good stuff that we've been talking about all the way through this series. So that accountability piece is very, very important. And it's, again, intrinsically linked to all the other things in whatever context you put it in. It might be directly linked, it might be indirectly linked, but yeah, very much so.
I mean, listen, you raise a good point there that we maybe just need to mention for a minute or two. Is that, why do people react that way when challenged, or when this thing is brought up, we'll mention it?
Yeah.
Well, it's self-protection. It's nothing more than that. It's self-protection. Who are you to tell me this, that, and the other? But that's the problem. It's not somebody being critical and saying you're not good at your job. It's just somebody saying, I've observed this. What's going on? So it's not that at all, nor should it be seen as such. But again, as you mentioned, if the other elements of the dysfunctional behavior, if they're not present and not observable, that's when we get defensive behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So accountability, making ourselves and each other accountable.
Absolutely. Holding each other to account.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For being committed to the cause.
Yeah. So just to have a quick recap here, we started off with trust.
Yes, we
talked
did.
about trust, the absence of trust specifically.
Correct.
From the Lencioni model.
Mm-hmm.
And then after we talked about trust, we talked about conflict, the absence of conflict, or the absence of
positive conflict.
Positive conflict,
sure.
Yeah. So on the back of trust and conflict, we talked about commitment, an absence of commitment or a lack of commitment. Yeah.
Yep.
Commitment to the cause, commitment to the the big picture, I suppose. What we see as the organisation's raison d'etre, if you like.
Yeah.
Slipping a bit of French there.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. And then on this podcast, we've talked about accountability. We talked about that, making ourselves and each other accountable for the outcomes, and these outcomes finally turn up in the form of results. So what are your thoughts on the results, the final part of the 5 dysfunctions pyramid?
Well, I know you've just run through it there, but do you mind if I just rerun it? Just to put the cherry on top of the cake, so to speak.
Have at it.
We've done separate podcasts on each one of these, so if you've not heard this, rewind and have a listen. But if trust does not exist, we won't ever experience the ability to have positive conflict, to ask questions, to challenge. If we cannot ask those potentially difficult to answer questions, if we don't have freedom of speech and we don't have a voice, we might not ever be as committed as we should, because we can't align it in our world to make it right. If we don't have 100% commitment, we'll never be 100% accountable. And this is why when people hold us to account, we get defensive. But when those 4 elements are present, the theory and fact, of course, is that the results should almost organically take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the results are, they're there. They're real, they're palpable, they're measurable, they are tangible.
Exactly.
And that's ultimately what we want.
Sure it is.
And again, we're not in this for the fun of it. We're here because we're committed and we trust people. That's right.
And if you think about it logically, Spencer, if one of those elements is removed, there's a high chance we won't achieve what we're trying to achieve. So if we take away trust and we work in an environment where there is a lack of trust, then we're not going to be able to have that positive conflict.
No.
Or if we have the positive conflict, it will turn negative and it will cause chaos rather than productivity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if commitment's missing and then people are pulling in different directions and there's loads of silos, we're not going to achieve all we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Now, listen, this doesn't mean to say that organizations and teams are going to fall over.
No.
That's not the case. It's just a very simple case of, could we achieve more than we currently achieve?
Yeah.
If these things were present and correct than we currently do.
Right.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
This is not the success determinator, if you like.
No.
Because people and organizations will still be successful when these things are not present. The question is, how much more successful could they be if these things were present?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Makes a great point. You make a great point there. The amount of times we have sat in a room with an organization, a group of leaders, or a team, and we've worked through this with from a functional teams perspective, and we've said one of the opening lines is to basically sort of say, look, we're not trying to fix something that's broken here. We're trying to enhance something that already works. So it's not, don't get us wrong. It's not a binary option. You either use these and win, or don't use these and fall on your sword. It's not a case of that.
No, it isn't.
But yeah, it's just one of these. It's one of these concepts that just ring bells.
Well, as Patrick Lencioni says, it's one of the most simple and straightforward concepts that you will ever come across, but potentially one of the hardest you will ever try to implement.
Yeah.
Because we're relying on humans to implement it successfully.
Yes. And excellent. Thank you. So off the back of that, and I ain't going to repeat them all because I've said them and you've said them, so everybody knows where they are.
Yeah.
The 5 dysfunctions of a team dissected. Thank you very much, Dave Pendleton.
As always, a pleasure, Spencer.
And we'll catch you again on another T2 Hubcast.